Hey everybody, welcome back to the Royal Palace podcast. I'm here with Liam and Nancy, our new cultural correspondent who everyone loved from our last episode, so she's back by popular demand. And we are here to try something a bit different. A lot of things are going on here in France right now. Politics are heating up. We got municipal elections coming. We got a social security budget and a budget of the state that is pretty draconian, I'd say, trying to be put on us by the current political regime in France. So we decided we're going to try doing a news episode, kind of talk about some of these topics that are affecting us all here in France. So yeah, how do you feel to be back, Nancy?
Great, yeah. I've had so many people slide into my DMs since appearing on the Royal Palace podcast. It's been really great for my personal brand. One thing though, I am here to talk about one thing and one thing only, and that is the Louvre. I want to ride on this newfound fame, and if by any chance Culture Minister Rashida Dati is listening, I want her to know that I am ready to take on the direction of the Louvre. Tell Laurence Decaire to give her resignation and hire me. I will take care of the security. I will deploy many innovative solutions with AI and Internet of Things and all sorts of innovations. So all of this to say, I will talk about the latest developments in the Louvre, but also excited to hear about the news.
To eliminate rules that don't make sense.
It's the usual French talk, stall and surrender.
All scientists dying on kryptonite.
The cultural hold the night.
You Americans have given us such sense was very evil. We make our planet great again.
Going to save the Louvre for the end so that everyone is just here for Nancy. We'll have to wait and listen to the boring blather first. So what else have you got for us, Patrick? What's in the news in France right now? All right, so we did an episode on the budget. That was Marlon and I. Liam was out. And, a lot has happened since then. There have been several social movements across France that have kind of, at least initially, seemed to push the government back and have to make concessions. But it doesn't seem like that'll be the case. Finally, they're basically trying to use the budget debate as a way to bring down public spending and to make the public service, quote unquote, more efficient, which of course means refusing more social services to people, or making things worse. But we'll get to the kind of some of the reductions in public service a little bit later. But for now, I just want to bring up some aspects about the debt. One of the big things is that France borrows about in 2026 they're supposed to borrow 310 billion euros on financial markets, which is kind of interesting because for one of the things is you don't actually a lot of the people who buy French, what do you call it, treasury notes, are French companies like Société Générale and whatnot, who will then, kind of sell them on secondary markets. But there's also, of course, a large portion of investors who are foreign and, likely firms like BlackRock and everything. So the kind of current line in the media these days is we have to be careful because what if BlackRock basically decides to sell all of its treasury notes for France, and then interest rates will explode. But of course, I think as we talked about on a previous episode, it's all kind of a bit silly because the fundamental issue is there's not enough money coming in, and we know how to solve that. So what's kind of interesting about the whole kind of political media sphere around the budget crisis is Humanité came out. So that's one of the paper that was historically close to the Communist Party in France, but remains kind of I think we talked about it on our French press episode, which I recommend you guys all check out. Liam did a great job preparing that. There was a story where basically they're talking about Bruno Le Maire. So this was the former economy minister but who also has a kind of a funny backstory that Nancy will get into here in a sec. But he basically, the press came out with this secret letter in which he accused Emmanuel Macron of concealing the slippage in public accounts. So that's also kind of like a funny thing that happened leading up to this. So they basically had 42 billion euros in missing tax revenue. So basically they predicted inaccurately the revenue coming into the state by 42 billion, which again, as a reminder, we're at, the deficit essentially, or the money that they're looking for is like around 60, 80 billion, something like that. So, already it's, apparently an accounting error that has brought the situation supposedly to where we are today. And Bruno Le Maire mentions that the debt has increased by like an insane amount under Emmanuel Macron, and he kind of blames him for it, and he accuses Emmanuel Macron of that. What is obviously a little bit funny about this is that like Bruno Le Maire was economy minister, so it's a little bit ironic of him to be going after Bruno Le Maire. Like he played a huge role in this. Like,
he was economy minister for 7 years under Macron.
Yeah, but honestly, and here's the funny bit. Honestly, I'm not surprised that, I genuinely believe Bruno Le Maire could have missed this for a good reason, which is that he also did something else in his career besides be economy minister. What's that, Nancy?
Yeah, so Bruno Le Maire, he wears many professional hats, and one of them is of a novelist. And in particular, he wrote and released in 2023 what was described as a very steamy novel with explicit sex scenes that has been called by some outlets as basically straight up erotica. His 471-page novel Fugue Américaine, translated as American Runaway from publishing house Gallimard, is the one in question. I unfortunately haven't had the pleasure to read it, but this is from a random article I found on it. Can I read a short quote from
Go ahead, yeah.
From it? So in one passage that takes a particularly racy turn, Le Maire explicitly describes a character named Oscar having sex with Julia, another character in the novel. She wrapped one leg around my waist, clutched her other leg to my ankle, and tilted her head back. The passage begins before veering into language too racy to be published in a newspaper. Damn it. Like, where's the...
You'll have to buy it.
I know.
You tell me he wrote this while he was economy minister.
Yes, yeah,
Wow. So your theory is that he was too distracted by writing erotica to notice the 40 billion euro accounting error.
I'm not saying
it happens.
We're not saying that's it, but we're saying that would be a reasonable defense that I think Bruno Le Maire could bring up in his defense of why he and the Macronie made this mistake.
Yeah, I mean, surely, Liam, as aspiring writers ourselves, we can understand. Sometimes you just, get so caught up in your writing, you kind of miss, what is it? How many million?
40
billion. Yeah.
By the way, there is a real reason for this money being missing, and it's actually kind of obvious. Basically, under Emmanuel Macron's presidency, there's been a big shift to what politicians call, or anyone calls, supply side economics, where the amount of revenue that the state brings in is essentially calculated and on how well is the economy doing, and you rely on French businesses doing particularly well and also not finding creative ways to defiscalize all their revenues. And it would seem that this supply side economics policy of Emmanuel Macron does not seem to be bringing in the money it was supposed to. Question is this an accounting error? Is this intentionally being or ignorantly being overambitious in terms of what you think is going to come into the state in terms of revenue? I don't know. But what I can say is, I think we talked about it on at least Marlon and I talked about it on the episode we did a couple months ago. The move to putting all taxation on the TVA, for example, is a risky move because you're necessarily betting, first of all, you're slowing consumption by increasing, tax rates on people's consumption, which is not good. But it, of course, also means that you're relying on French consumption powering the revenue-making ability of the state, which itself is quite problematic as we're all kind of going through, most of Europe is going through at least a very slow growth period. Maybe, you could call it an economic downturn. What is certain is for all 44 billion, being wrong by 44 billion matters, it's not enough to explain, kind of how we're in this situation.
No, of course not. But while we're on the topic of Bruno Le Maire, I have to point out that I've just seen on Wikipedia that his full name is Bruno Maurice Marie Le Maire.
That's awesome.
That's a great name.
His last name is Maire, and his middle name is Marie. Man. By the way, for listeners who don't speak French, Le Maire does just mean the mayor. His name is Bruno the Maire. Anyway, let's move on to the next headline. What have you got for us, Patrick?
All right, so I said we'd talk a bit about healthcare and Social Security. I know I promised after my hospitalization that I mentioned at one point a while back, we would do an episode on healthcare. We never got to it, but hey, let's talk a little bit about healthcare right now. So France has something called Social Security, and it's not like American Social Security because it's not like just retirement benefits essentially. But it has a budget to itself, like Marlon and I explained on that episode a little bit back. But it has a budget to itself, and it provides several services, and that includes what we call health insurance, or assurance maladie, or sickness insurance, I suppose. And the Social Security system in France has an interesting history. It actually comes from the resistance to the Nazis and Vichy France. And it was the result of the left, the socialists and communists, being a substantial part of the resistance to fascism. And it was a system that was originally managed by workers. And essentially the logic was you pay into Social Security and you get benefits as a result, right? We help out the people who get sick and can't go to work. So in France, when you're on sick leave, essentially, your salary is paid for by Social Security. So your employer actually isn't paying for your sick leave, but workers generally are. But of course, I don't remember if it was at the end of the 60s or early 70s, the system was taken away from the working class and kind of rolled up in the state apparatus. And particularly in the last 30 years, just like any good universal healthcare system in the world, has been increasingly reliant on private providers, on private insurance, and general degradation of services, while we still pay the same amount into the system. And of course, the kind of like overarching political argument on the right or the center is that there's some sort of economic problem with the system, which is kind of counterintuitive, I think. But anyway, so there's this new proposal that the government's putting forward, and basically it's going to reduce several things. But one, we're going to be paying more for medical visits. So right now in France, like seeing a doctor, I want to say is like 26, 27 euros, something like that. It's going to 30. It sounds like nothing to Americans, but I think it's important for Americans who want a socialized medicine or medical system to understand how these systems in Europe are being kind of degraded, because, if you ever want to win, you need all these things to work globally. You can't just like keep fighting for it in the US and,
Yes, and conversely, it is also important for French people and Europeans and people from any other country with socialized medicine, which is almost all of them listening, to know that the things that your governments are pushing you towards is an American model. And if you look at what the American model is like and you talk to anyone who has any experience with the American healthcare system, there is no way, this is the last thing you should want. And we will do a full healthcare episode at some point, explaining both how the American system works and the French system works. So I think it's also useful. I think Europeans do not appreciate just how terrible, truly, truly terrible the American healthcare system is, and every step being taken to make things, more expensive, higher copays, more privatized, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, in the French model, is just pushing it towards the eventual destination, which we'll probably never get to fully, but in the direction of the American system, which is something that no one in France should want, unless you own a private healthcare company, in which case you probably do want it.
Yeah, and there's this. So one of the ideas on how to make the healthcare system work is something called a franchise médicale, and their idea is kind of like to go to the American system of having what do you call it? What do you call it in English, Liam?
What?
Franchise médicale.
I don't know what that is.
Everyone in the U.S. has one, usually, depending on how good your provider
Are you talking
is.
about a deductible?
Yes, a deductible. So I remember someone in my family had to get private healthcare in the United States outside of their employer relationship because they were doing freelancing essentially, and they had like a $10,000 or $20,000 deductible, meaning they had to spend $10 in yearly healthcare expenses before the insurance company even got involved. And so that's one of the ideas that's on the table. Another idea is limiting the amount in which you can be on sick leave or on leave for a work accident.
And by the way,
based on, because like right now, like if you have an accident at work, generally speaking, you'll be on as long as medically necessary. So as long as you need to be off of work because you had an accident. The new idea is let's just say, regardless, if you're in an accident that takes you out of work for 3 years, whatever, 4 months is going to be the cap that they're suggesting.
I just wanted to say for American listeners who may not have fully grasped that, there's no such thing as deductibles under the French system. There's nothing like that, right, Patrick? I mean,
there's copays, but no,
there's no copays, but there's no deductibles. Yeah. Do you understand what a deductible is, Nancy? Asking the European here.
I think so. It's okay. Is it only because it's the same word, franchise? Is it kind of similar to like car insurance, essentially, where like it's like you have to reach a certain level of, in the case of car insurance, of damage, like a certain sum before your insurance kicks in. And I guess in the healthcare context, it's you have to have had medical like services that you pay out of pocket up to a certain amount before your insurance kicks in.
Exactly. Applying the car insurance model to humans.
Yeah,
that's how it works in the US.
That sounds great.
I think it is probably any Americans listening who weren't already aware of this. That's probably crazy to them that France doesn't have that at all for health insurance.
Now, I'd point out that the notion of a deductible, there can be, in a very specific insurance context, there can be a reason why you would want one other than just trying to put more onus on individuals. One of the reasons could be preventing fraud or the belief that there's fraud. That's why, like, for most people have car insurance. They know that if you get a small scratch on your car, you can't just make an insurance claim on that because your deductible is too high. It's to prevent, first of all, claims like that, but also for, just small damages. They want you to put some skin in the game in order to, get coverage so that you're not just, constantly wrecking your car and then asking the insurance company to fix it.
Yeah, but with
healthcare, that's not the case because it's your doctor who's going to decide. And that's an important thing to understand, that in France especially, but I mean it's true everywhere, but in France especially, the idea of like doctors being sovereign in making medical decisions. I mean, I guess that doesn't exist in the US if you see the extent to which insurance companies in the United States get involved in the actual administration of your care. But as it works right now in France, like if they say you need something, you need it, right? So there's kind of in the right wing media sphere in France, there's always this idea that there's people on sick leave for years who are abusing the system, right? Because it's doctors who make that decision. It's not you who decide to be on sick leave for 4 years. I mean, they do it on the basis of objective medical fact, right?
I love just breaking my leg for fun to then go and ask for expensive surgery and medical procedures that then I go to my corrupt fellow Bulgarian doctor who does them for cheap, and then we split the difference.
And if you want proof that the whole idea of having a deductible is just a way of reducing cost for the system and offloading what is thousands of, essentially reducing people's ability to spend things on like food and other things, reducing their, consumers' buying power. The proof of that is the fact that when we have these kinds of deductibles, they don't do a thing where we reimburse the deductible if you hit it, right? Because they could do a thing like that where it's like, okay, if you have a serious medical need that costs $20,000, well, we're gonna reimburse you for the $10,000 or whatever, $1,000, $500 deductible, right? Because it's like, okay, well now it's so serious. Anyway, my point is to just say that like it's obvious what they're trying to do here, which is offload the cost of the system onto us. But I have some statistics from an article from Humanité here. It says that, and so they're actually they're citing a poll that Les Echos did, so the Echoes. They say 7 out of 10 French people oppose reductions to the system. Shocking. And 8 out of 10 people believe the system has deteriorated. So that's awesome. And I can say, by the way, from my hospitalization, I like kind of had this double reaction of like, wow, it's amazing being in a healthcare system where you genuinely feel that like the people involved in the system are not there. They're there to do a good job and a good service to people. And there's something kind of charming about like not seeing kind of some of the excesses of American healthcare just kind of everywhere. But on the other hand, the walls of the hospitals are literally falling. That's a thing a lot of politicians say, but it's true. I mean, I've seen it, like the paint is peeling, like you can feel the extent to which the hospital system is defunded. And, someone has to pay for it. And a great example is like in my hospitalization, when I was there, I needed a CT scan, and they did it when I was hospitalized. They did it there at the hospital. But when I had to do a checkup after it, like at the hospital, they told me to go to a private clinic to get the CT scan done. So I had to spend more money because the Social Security doesn't pay for all of it when you do it at a private clinic. We'll get all of that in another episode. But I asked the doctor, I'm like, why don't you have a CT scan? Like, why can't I do it here? And he's like, we are too overloaded. We have to offload onto the private system. And it's obviously just like an insane loss of money, complete inefficiency doing it that way.
I want to point out a lot of places in the U.S., the hospitals are crumbling too, and they're not public. So,
wasn't there also something about trying to make it? Well, you mentioned trying to make it harder to get sick leave, but also isn't there a proposition to essentially replace, in some cases, sick leave with just telework, like working from home while you're sick, as a way to not take sick leave?
Yeah. The doctors can. So already doctors are like, contrary to popular belief, very hesitant to prescribe sick leave. Like, I think every employee in France has had this experience of like dying in their bed, talking to their doctor and being like, I don't know if I can work. Right? And then the doctor's like, sure, I'll prescribe you 1 day of sick leave. And the thing is, when they prescribe 1 day of sick leave, you don't get paid for that. It's only after the second day in the public service or the fourth day in the private sector. And they're also trying to make it 3 days as well in the public sector as well. But yeah, so the idea is now that your doctor can just say, well, you can telework it.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Which is, by the way, already what a lot of people that I work with in the private sector, like in tech, are doing. I feel like, I think a big part of it is just people not knowing, or like kind of having that American or whatever mindset in their heads where they're like, oh, sick leave is for when you're really sick. Like I can't tell you the number of times where like I would be on Zoom calls with people who are like, look like they're like on their deathbeds, like with the seasonal flu or viruses or whatever. And I'm like, just take a fucking sick day.
What drives me nuts is I go to work in person, and every once in a while, someone gets pretty sick, but they're still going to the office, right? And I'm like, man, I wish they would just, I wish the system would encourage them to take a sick day, because guess what happens? Everyone in the office becomes sick. And then either everyone is like working very inefficiently because they're all sick, or everyone is suddenly out on sick leave because they're all sick. So it's a crazy system. Well, speaking of crazy systems, healthcare things get worse. So this has been a scandal going on for a while, but I'm just going to read you guys the title here because I think this one really deserves it. If a facility is not full and therefore not profitable, that's when the trouble begins. How the Colisée nursing home group organizes its quest for the smallest savings. So this has been going on a while. There's been like several scandals. Basically, like each group that runs nursing homes, they're often private in France, has been accused of various like just absolutely insane kind of like, poor treatment of the people that are there. And, of course, just like in the US, like the public system contributes to these private operators. They're essentially making money off the back of the public system. And so I got some great points on this. So first of all, the group is somehow 1.6 billion in debt, despite all this money that is being injected. And of course, this is the debt comes from where? Well, of course, when a Swedish investment fund, basically bought the group, and most of it comes due in 2027. They have, more than 30 million euros in irregularities, which basically like means that like they have like, accounting issues that pose question or that are, I'm not sure exactly what that entails. So that's cool. And then there's another article about here that's entitled Nursing Homes, Involuntary Manslaughter, Lack of Care, Savings on Food, etc. And they mentioned 3 residents who died after ingesting dishwasher liquid. So this was at the Maison de Bouilly in Gran, which is a commune in the department of Drôme. And so the nursing home is subject to an investigation opened by the prosecutor for a complaint of involuntary manslaughter. And the cause of death was that three residents somehow ingested dishwashing liquid. I don't know how the hell that happens, other than just not poor management of these places, in the quest of savings, as they said. And they also had they invoiced their clients up to 3,692 euros per month, which is pretty incredible if they're going to let you die of dishwashing liquid.
Is that paid for by the state, usually by Assurance Maladie?
Partially, yeah.
Yeah, classic. Further Americanization of France. Private equity-owned, malpractice doing chains of old people's homes being paid for by the public. That's great.
Yeah, and they give an anecdote here just, about how, there's not enough caregivers, classic, they give an example of someone's late wife who was nearly 85 kilos when she entered the nursing home, and in just a few months went down to 45 kilos.
Jesus. Yeah, that's more than malpractice. Like, what are they doing there?
These for-profit nursing home chains are some of the scummiest people. I mean, it's just... Because, they're profiting off of... It's basically that scheme from Better Call Saul where he goes in and cons all the old people. It's like, look, a lot of old people don't have it all there, and sadly, a lot of old people's families do not care about them and just want them out of sight. And there's a lot of people willing to make money out of this in the least ethical way possible. And society doesn't care because, these people are just waiting to die. They're not productive anymore.
Well, that brings up something fun that I don't have here planned, but I think worth mentioning. One of the social laws that the Macroni government is obsessed with is the right to die, because I guess that might help save us money on these people. Like, instead of sending them to nursing homes, we can just send them to their deathbeds.
That's great. Taking inspiration from the whole Canadian thing where people apparently get encouraged to kill themselves because the state doesn't want to pay for things.
It's incredible.
Well, maybe that nursing home is actually ahead of the curve. They already have it. It's a little bit artisanal, but dishwasher liquid, injection or whatever you do with the actual legal, what do you call it, euthanasia. It's, they're ahead of the curve. They're innovators.
Yeah, and because everything is going really well in France, I suggest we go to our next subject, our next kind of topic, which is about what's going on kind of on the labor side of things. So for one, on December 2nd, there's going to be a day of strike. All the unions are calling for it, kind of against the budget and everything that's going on right now. And they have a reason to be upset because one of the things that France's largest union, the CGT, so the Confederation General of Travail, which Nancy mentioned on our last podcast regarding the Louvre, they kind of put together this report that showed up in Humanité, where they talk about over 100,000 jobs in France being either threatened or eliminated. So basically, companies in France have to put together restructuring plans when they want to get rid of employees, and in theory they're supposed to show why their business model requires that they get rid of these employees. And the number of 100,000, we were doing the math before we started the show, that's like what, 1/3% of the working force, so it doesn't actually sound that big. But one of the things that's worth noting is a lot of these jobs are in important sectors, so including the public service and including teachers and researchers. So that's awesome already. There's also the sectors that are represented. There's of course the industrial sector, which includes about 37,000 jobs. It's mainly from ArcelorMittal, which is a steel manufacturer in France, because France still manufactures steel, but it looks like that won't be the case very soon, with industry moving out of Europe and into the United States, Brazil, and some of East Asia. So that's awesome. And also, Société Générale, one of France's largest bank, is getting rid of 4,500 people, which, to be fair, I've been to Société Générale, and I was always pleasantly surprised, despite who likes banks, right? But despite the fact that bank, they have a surprisingly well-staffed in-person office, and I always thought that was pretty nice of them. But I'm glad to hear they'll be getting rid of those unnecessary in-person services.
I hope they pair that with also not making their app easy to use. So it's now just impossible.
Their app is awful.
Their app, exactly.
It's awful.
And that's, why they have to have... I mean, that is probably an actual inefficiency, is to just have the terrible apps people have to go in person. I know you made it sound like you like going to the bank in person, which, look, sure, maybe sometimes, but I've never gone to the bank and been happy about it, frankly. But I doubt they will make their app any better. They'll probably just have... It's hard to go see them in person, and also the app doesn't work.
They should integrate AI. That'll only do great things for the Société Générale.
I'd like to turn my checking account entirely over to AI management. They can do with it what they want.
Yeah, you just find out that your entire monthly paycheck goes to your AI subscription to manage your bank account.
It'd be worth it because it'd be so modern.
Well, speaking of AI, it's not said here, but one of the things they're getting rid of, there's a lot of jobs at the supermarket chain Auchan and at the casino group.
The casino group being a supermarket group.
That has nothing to do with casinos, except for the
Confusingly.
fact that they have a brand called Casino, but they also own all the other brands too,
Yeah.
except for Carrefour.
It's the second biggest supermarket chain in France.
By the way,
after Carrefour.
fun story. Back when I was a student and my parents were still, managing my not managing my finances, but, giving me money. They had access to my bank account. And so they would see these, expenses to something called Casino. And quite often, because the Casino supermarket down the street from where I lived was the main one I would go to. And at one point they were like, Nancy, what is going on?
You're going every single day to a casino and spending €5.
Yeah.
That's funny.
And this applies to kind of, I think, most of the companies on this list, but I think it's worth underlining for the Casino Group. These are the companies that profited massively over the increase in grocery prices in the last few years in France. They were reported just a couple of years ago of having record profits. We're talking margins that are just out of this world, and now they're telling us they have to get rid of jobs.
What jobs are they actually getting rid of? What supermarket jobs can be replaced with AI?
I don't know. I didn't look at it.
I assume it's cashiers, right? Just more of those awful self-checkout
They haven't already done that?
cashiers. I feel like they have, but they still, in most supermarkets, still have physical cashiers as well. So maybe they're reducing those and
Doesn't really have
adding
anything to do
more
with AI. does it?
self-checkout.
Well, if you want something, Liam, that has to do with AI, I got a story for you. So L'Équipe, which literally means the team, I don't read it, but it's a
sports newspaper. It's owned by the people who own the Tour de France, actually.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Groupe Amaury.
I didn't know anyone owned Tour de France.
Well, they organize it. I'm not sure what
Okay. So it's some sort of association.
No, it's a company. I think it is. I think the Tour de France is for profit.
Really?
Yeah, it would explain all the sponsorship. Have you seen the Tour de France in person?
No.
I
Seen
saw it
preparations
once.
for it in person, but no, we never saw it.
It's fun, but I saw it once, and the funny thing is, we were just in some tiny village, waiting for a couple hours for it to go by, and for maybe 40 minutes before the actual bikers pass, you've got this just flotillas of the sponsors trucks, some shitty like a really shitty version of a 4th of July or Macy's parade or whatever, and there's throwing sponsored stuff off the truck, and there was so much of it And because we were in this tiny village where there was like, there's probably like 40 people watching there or something, we just got showered in this stuff because they clearly had too much of it. One of them was like, I remember Skoda, the Slovak, or is it Czech car company, was one of the sponsors, and they were throwing just these like really, really shitty little hats. Just tons of them. I probably ended up with like 5. Like they were throwing like more hats than there were people, and they were like little shitty things that were already falling apart. And just all this stuff are like some bank sponsors, and they're just throwing pens, and you're like just littering the countryside of this stuff. The only good sponsor was, what's that company that makes the Madeleine? They were throwing Madeleine, and that was like the only thing anyone was actually happy to get thrown at them. But
Yeah.
the fact that they're for profit.
Yeah, I bet that the mairie, like the municipality, was very happy about that. Just the next day having to fucking clean up just piles of pens and
that for thousands of kilometers through France. They're just littering the countryside with all this crap. But anyway, what is their newspaper doing?
Well, they have decided that they no longer need as many proofreaders, and so they've already gotten down to 5, and now they are going down to 3, with the idea that they can replace, I guess, 2 of them with AI, presumably with the goal of getting rid of them all. That's cool. They're, the unions are obviously like opposing this, and from the article they mentioned the fact that like the attitude, if you will, of the bosses there is that, yeah, sure, obviously this is going to make things worse in terms of like our stories being copy edited, right? But whatever, it seems to be the attitude.
I mean, honestly, I think most English language newspapers and online magazines got rid of their copy editors long before AI, judging by the amount of typos you see in them.
Well, I feel like now it's probably actually not seeing a lot of typos is a concern, because
that's true.
Then it's like,
and it's AI.
This is definitely AI generated.
Yeah, make sure to, any humans out there writing, make sure to put lots of writing the wrong there and thing like that, writing it's without an apostrophe into your writing so people know it's written by a human.
Yeah, well, it's what some college counselors already have to tell their students to do for college applications, because, essentially they're all running the college applications through these AI detection tools that are not very effective to begin with, but also getting worse and worse. And so they have to go back to telling the kid, hey, you should write your college admissions essay more shittily, or they have to go with them and edit it to make it sound worse so that it would, not be flagged as AI.
If you write your essays worse than AI could write them, like ChatGPT, to be fair to it, does not make many grammar mistakes. So if you just throw in just like sort of a bunch of obvious errors, then yeah, no one will suspect you of doing AI. Yeah. That's great.
Life hack, everybody. Just write worse.
Well, I'm sure, I haven't looked, but I'm sure on GitHub there's probably already tools to try and like trick those things by making your already bad AI writing worse. Which is great. It's amazing the amount of effort that's going into writing bad college essays, trying to catch writing bad college essays, and then trying to like cheat it. Honestly though, it's not even college essays, right? It's just like the entire business sphere has embraced a long time ago, long before AI, just writing and saying a lot of nothing.
Yeah, that's why AI's writing is so... That has been, I mean, obviously that's why it's getting like such a wide uptake, especially in business, is because people are already trying to write meaningless, overblown things, and AI is good at generating that fast. I was just thinking with L'Équipe though, a sports newspaper feels like actually one of the worst newspapers to be doing that, paradoxically, because copywriters don't just check for typos; they also are doing fact checking, making sure that people have got names right, the ages right, and so on.
Well, that's one of the
if you're writing about
the
sports,
brings up, yeah.
And if you're writing about sports, you're writing a lot about people with a lot of money and who care a lot about their personal brand. And you don't want to be casually making false claims about them or, quoting the wrong weight for a footballer or whatever. I feel like they're probably
Well, I think it's also
pretty quick to get upset about that kind of thing.
It's also likely that it'll in the process of copy editing will like flip a 2 to a 3 or a 8 to a 20. Just like that's like some of the risk you run in using these kinds of large language models is they're likely to make like a minor modification like that can significantly change what even the original text said, never mind like fixing things.
Yeah, just imagine it just an article where all of the scores of some sort of sports game are like completely wrong because I don't know, is AI good at reporting on sports like game scores?
No, because if you ask AI what was the score for the game, they're probably going to look up what L'Equipe says.
Right.
Like, that's what they do when you Google it, is it looks up what, like, the newspaper says. So if the newspaper is asking AI, we're going to get some sort of horrible feedback loop where it's going to start inventing players and, God, who knows.
Oh, it is 100% going to hallucinate the names of players, and there's going to be some hilarious, very, politically insensitive inventions of ethnic players' names.
Or making ethnic players' names white.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Well, before we get to our Louvre thing, it's coming up here. Let's just talk a little bit about some of the politics that's going on. One thing is the left right now in the National Assembly is pushing for, and notably the France Insoumise, this is the France Unbowed party we talked about on an earlier episode, that the left wants to nationalize ArcelorMittal, which is the company I mentioned earlier that's getting rid of a bunch of jobs. Here it says that currently the company employs 16,000 direct jobs and 70,000 subcontractors. So good to know they already went to the subcontractor model a long time ago. Again, this company that the left wants to nationalize is, they make steel, among other things, but mainly steel. And some people would say that's a strategic interest for France to be able to make its own steel. And the CGT accuses, these layoffs as having no economic reason. And also the CGT and Humanité talk about the fact that at present they are given an insane amount of public aid to keep them from going under, so that it makes a lot more sense to just go ahead and nationalize it.
Yeah, I mean, these companies, this has been going on for ages in France. France takes these factory closures which have been going on for decades because of deindustrialization very seriously. I feel like both right and left-wing and Macron's governments have done this, and they go and they beg the company, Volkswagen, Renault, ArcelorMittal, whoever it is, to not shut down the plant and give them all sorts of tax breaks. But this obviously creates an incentive for these companies to threaten every couple of years to shut down their plants, because they know that it means the French government is going to give them candy to not do that. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, and one of the quotes here, just to like kind of put it in perspective, I'm sure there's more to read into this, but one of the quotes here is, while the senatorial inquiry, of which it was estimated that the public aid granted to I don't know if it's the quote here. Yeah, they say that like in the framework of like reindustrializing France, which was a Macron thing that didn't seem to actually reindustrialize France kind of at all. The state in the framework of that gives out about 211 billion euros, and they're like, yeah, but like the cost of nationalizing something like ArcelorMittal is 4 billion would be the cost of like buying it out, right? So instead of just giving 211 billion, which by the way, enough to finance the supposed debt crisis or deficit crisis, could just be used to nationalize this company and put an end to it, because they were given a lot of public money in the framework of decarbonization of their activity, which I'm like, look, I'm all for making steel like more environmentally or whatever, but like it is a polluting activity to make steel. Like it just is. It doesn't matter if it's done here in here in France, the United States, Brazil. It's a bad thing for the planet, but you also need steel to do things. So it kind of just sounds like a lot of money given to companies for no reason, especially if they're going to close up shop now.
The French government gives so much money to companies for no reason. It's a big part of what they do. The Le Monde Diplo had a great article about that a couple months ago, which I wish I had open, but I do not. But you repeatedly misreading metal as metal made me think. I'd never thought about that, because that's the second biggest steel company in the world, and you're probably thinking, probably a lot of people reading it, that the name of that company think that metal means metal in like German or something. It's not. It's the name of Lakshmi Mittal, the Indian billionaire who is the founder of that company. Nominative determinism or whatever they say. You had to go into steel with a name like Mittal.
I was gonna say this. It sounds like bad naming, but then again, if you make steel, how much does it matter? I think that's just my marketing SEO brain.
I don't know much about them, but industrial conglomerates don't really need branding. But it's this company founded probably like in the 80s or so by Lakshmi Mittal, and it just slowly bought up all the mostly formerly state-owned steel-making companies across Europe. Also a lot of like I think Bethlehem Steel in the U.S. and Pittsburgh and those kind of things, and they just own the dying steel industries across the planet, which is any steel industry that isn't China is a dying steel industry. And I feel like, again, I haven't read too much about them. It's probably an interesting thing to dive into, but it sure seems like a lot of their business is extorting governments to pay them off so they don't shut down fill in the blank country's last steel mill.
Good old fashioned racketeering.
Yeah. I'm not accusing. We are not accusing Lakshmi Mittal of racketeering.
They are benefiting from programs which exist legally.
Yes.
All right. Now let's get into the fun stuff. Elections are coming up in March, assuming they don't get pushed back, but that's another subject. For all municipalities in France, I think Liam and I talked about this on, one of our really early episodes, but the basic idea here is that even though communes have a certain freedom in the French Republic, their actual electoral system is defined at the national level. Thus, generally speaking, all the elections happen on 2 days that are defined in advance at the national level. The term for which mayors are in office is 5 years. And the way they're elected is kind of a bit odd because you don't actually elect your mayor, even though the mayor is the person everyone has in their mind when they think of municipal governance. Instead, you elect a list, so a party list. You could say the socialists, for example, and whoever gets the majority of votes, or the majority of votes in the second round, because there's 2 rounds, unless you win the first round, but that's a whole another thing. They basically get a bonus for becoming the first list, and thus they take over the municipality. So, for example, imagine there's a right-wing party that gets 35% of the vote, and the rest of the vote is divided up by 4 other parties, or 3 other parties. Because the right-wing list will be the one at the end that has the relative majority of votes, they are the ones who take over the municipality, despite being a small portion of the actual vote. So it's not a proportional system. So that's kind of fun, because on the left in particular, there's a lot of turmoil. For one, there was recently in the National Assembly a vote to get rid of the current government. So that would be that of Bayrou.
Le Cornu.
No, Le Cornu. God, it just changes every day,
yeah.
Man. Changes every day. That would be the one of Cornu, not his first government, because, I don't even think we covered that on the Royal Palace podcast. It doesn't matter. It was all a show. He's back. I know we did an episode saying he left, but he didn't really leave.
He came back immediately.
And so there was a vote in the National Assembly. The far right, of course, said, we don't want this government. The left said it didn't want this government. And then there was the Socialist Party, which, again, not actually socialist. And they, by 18 votes, made it such that the government survived its vote of no confidence. And one of the reasons is because they're traitors. The second reason is because they are worried that they will lose all their seats in the National Assembly if Macron decides to dissolve the National Assembly. So they want this terrible government to survive in order to keep their 4 seats. They have more than that, but you know what I mean. And they are worried somehow that dissolving the National Assembly now will hurt them in the municipal elections. Although I really hope people remember come March of this year that the Socialist Party kept this government afloat. So what makes these elections fun and worrying is what I was just explaining earlier about how it's kind of a not winner takes all, but the winner, the relative majority gets basically a reward for being a part of or being the people who get the majority of votes, or relative majority of votes, even if it's not the majority of votes themselves, so not proportional. Is that the left can't seem to come to an agreement on how to deal with these elections. The Socialist Party And this is all over France. The Socialist Party doesn't seem to want to work with La France Insoumise, so the probably the largest or the most significant political force on the left. The PCF, the Parti Communiste Français, the French Communist Party, doesn't want to go into an agreement with La France Insoumise. And so in many municipalities, we might have a situation where there's 3 leftist parties against one or two right parties. That depends. Which means that if people can't find an agreement on the left, despite the majority of the electorate voting for the left, the right might end up winning in a lot of municipalities, and that includes Paris, because Paris has been under quote unquote left wing governance for like over 20 years. The current mayor is Hidalgo, and everyone kind of doesn't like her. On the left, on the right, center, kind of no one likes her. There was this recent scandal where it turns out with her, and she's legally allowed to do it, but it turns out with the amount of money she's basically this envelope of money that elected officials get, they can like spend it on like taxis to get to like different events and stuff. Well, it turns out she has an appetite for like Dior dresses and stuff. So by essentially our equivalent in France of public record requests, like our equivalent of the Freedom of Information Act, an association managed to get her expense report, and yeah, there were dresses on there of like over 3,500 euros, which of course some people might say is not how public officials should be spending our money.
Well, luckily, our friend of the podcast, Rashida Dati, current Minister of Culture and candidate to the municipal elections for next year, already has everything she needs. She already has lots of luxury items and jewels that she has not declared to the relevant authorities. So, in addition to various other scandals that you can read all about in her controversy section on Wikipedia, or hear about on a future episode coming soon to the Royal Palace podcast. But anyway, sorry, I kind of distracted us from the municipal.
I think to move things on from the municipal elections, because I think we'll do a whole episode about that when it happens. I think that Anne Hidalgo should be dressing herself in Shine, or Sheen, however you pronounce that, since it's now opening. Shane? Is it Shane? I don't know.
I have no idea.
It's now opening a flagship store. I think its first physical store anywhere.
Yeah.
Right across from Paris City Hall in BHV Marais.
Yeah.
Exciting. And people are mad about it.
God. Yeah. So, like, the whole... there's so much going on with Shine right now. In French, they say Sheen, which...
Okay, let's stick with that because...
sounds like China.
Sheen... Oh, yeah, that's... They did that on purpose.
Yeah, well, so this is the fun thing in France. Despite the fact that fast fashion has obviously won the normal buyer in France, the political class has this idea that fast fashion is bad, partly because they don't buy fast fashion. They buy 3,500 euro Dior dresses with public money, or really expensive suits in the case of some arrondissement mayors with the public dime. Fast fashion has obviously, just like everywhere in the world, won out. But there's a certain ruling class in France that doesn't like fast fashion and sees it as a threat. And so there's kind of like all eyes are kind of on Shine right now. One, people are mad about the store. Two, people are mad. Like, there was this whole 3 days of the news cycle last week about supposedly the company selling, apparently on their website, these dolls that were like of children and like sexualized children in some way, and as a result, they were opening all Shine packages at I believe it was at Charles de Gaulle or Orly, whatever, one of the airports where all these packages come in to verify the absence of pedocriminal dolls, which obviously we're not for sexual depictions of children. But anyway, it's just like all coming up at like one moment, and it's like, there's a lot of things happening in France right now. So it's kind of odd how they consumed an entire media cycle on this.
The child sex doll things, which, yeah, that's not a great look for them to be selling that, if that's true. I assume that was happening because they're one of there's so many things that they're selling on there. Like, this article I was looking at about it was just mentioned that, like, today's new in page on Shine's website lists more than 1,300 items. So I don't know how they work, but they must not be like auditing everything that's on there. Like,
I think third parties listing on there. Sellers.
Yeah, that's what I assumed.
Now, I don't know anything like concretely how this works. We could look more into it at some point. But like, there's this weird thing in France, and I think it's something about European law that requires like, or results in kind of all of these websites that are normally like outlets to have third-party sellers on their website, which when it doesn't, like, I feel like it doesn't make sense. Like, for example, Darty is like, by the way, there's a lot about Darty we could say, but Darty has it's like kind of a Best Buy type place. So it's like a store, right? But like their website is just full of third party sellers on it, and it's just like kind of odd because it's like a store. You would think it would only be through them, but you see that on like all of these like big European websites. I think it's because they're forced to for some competition thing. I have no idea.
This opposition to Shine being in, aside from the child sex doll thing, which I assume was just a thing that someone found in order for an excuse for the government to create this panic about it and stop all their packages at the airport, which is crazy. That's got to be a lot of packages, right? But this people being upset about them opening in BHV Marais, which is this iconic department store that's right across from City Hall in the Hôtel de Ville. I'm not sure I get this. Like, I'm looking at this article about it, and there's a picture of a protest out front of BHV Marais, and everyone's holding signs that say Chine au BHV, Paris n'est pas à vendre. Shine in the BHV, Paris isn't for sale. Which, what are you talking about? Paris is for sale. You're in front of a department store. Of course, everything in there is for sale. Like Paris is the city of stupid bullshit that's for sale. It's known for that. It's stupid luxury bullshit, but I don't really get like. And look, okay, yes, this fast fashion stuff is terrible. I know that Shein is making all this, plastic garbage that people wear once and then it falls apart. But is that so much different than Primark? Is it really so much? Is it really demonstrably worse what they're doing than H&M or Zara?
Or the luxury brands.
I mean, the luxury brand stuff is higher quality, sure, but...
Yeah, but less and less, I don't know, demonstrable. Like, I feel like that is presumed to be the case, but with kind of general enshittification, I wouldn't be surprised if that's less and less the case. And also, all of these things are...
Higher quality per
come
dollar
from the same
Shine, I bet.
place anyway.
Well, I mean, I do think it's not quite true that, like, the quality of Chanel is the same, or whatever, is the same as Shine. Like, there is...
No, but per dollar, I'm just saying,
No, of course.
Like, what we want is high quality clothes because they're good workmanship, and, I know LVMH still makes a lot of its stuff by hand or whatever, but, like,
Yeah, I would also point out that a lot of the people who buy Dior and so on, LVMH products, treat them the same way as fast fashion.
Yeah.
Which is wear them once and then throw them away, except instead of throwing them away, they're putting them in their closet where they have 10,000 other dresses.
Right. And notably, they're likely their personal closet when they bought it with public money.
Yeah. So I don't know too much about why people are so upset about this, but I can't help but assume it has to do something with China-phobia, right?
Yeah, I feel like...
manufactured.
I mean, it's debatable how much people actually care about this, because at the same time, I feel like every French person or person living in France that I know does shop from Shane or Shine.
Try to pronounce it as many different ways as we can this episode.
Yes. Come up with some really creative ones.
Chine.
But at the same time, I don't know, maybe it's some sort of like misguided national sentiment, right? Of, oh, well, yeah, we have, private whatever fast fashion bullshit too, but it's our bullshit.
Does France have a big fast fashion company? I feel like France might have missed that.
Yeah.
Well, France does have a textile sector, which is part of the 100,000 jobs that are threatened or already gotten rid of. So if people really cared about it, they would probably, the media wouldn't be talking so much about Shine, but more about where are the textile jobs that are in France going.
Apparently, Shine was originally called, or it's a shortening of She Inside. So is it pronounced Shein?
Shein.
Shein.
Shein. Shein.
What does that mean? She's inside. Inside.
Yeah, that sounds...
I mean, it's presumably invented by a Chinese person who didn't speak English.
That also sounds unfortunate, given the whole pedo-criminal doll scandal.
Maybe it's like that accusation about the right-wing conspiracy theory about that furniture company.
Which one?
Oh, yes, Wayfair.
Yeah,
Yeah,
people were
remember
claiming that the really expensive furniture, or like certain really expensive furniture items on that website were actually, we're not making this accusation, and we don't believe it, but they were claiming, some right-wingers were claiming it was because the no way that couch or whatever it was worth that much. It was actually because it included a child inside of it.
That was throwback. It was like 2020 maybe. It wasn't, the funny thing, it wasn't couches, it was wardrobes. And the idea was you order the wardrobe and it's got a child inside the wardrobe. And that's why the wardrobe is listed for like $1 million or something. Whereas the actual answer is probably just like, yeah, it's a marketplace. So there's all sorts of random, fake listings that appear for whatever reason.
Was that an American conspiracy, by the way?
Yeah, it was like a QAnon thing.
Okay. Well, I feel like someone should tell Candace Owens and all those people about the Shane scandal.
Yeah, they would love
I'm sure
that.
they'll come up with some really creative takes.
Well, whatever French sources got Candace Owens on the whole Brigitte Macron obsession.
Well, it was that guy who's living in Italy because he claims he's worried about the DGSI, the French Internal Security Service, but it's more likely he's just afraid of French courts.
Are we ready to hear the update on the Louvre?
Yeah, what everyone's all been waiting for. The only reason you've listened this far.
No, they haven't. They've skipped forward.
Yeah, probably, but hey, they're still here.
Whether you've hung around until now or you've skipped, get ready for what everyone's been waiting for, which is the update on the Louvre Heist. It's a little bit of old news by now, like some of it, but I feel like at the same time, there's also been a lot of fake news going around, so I thought it would be helpful to just kind of give a general update on where they're at with the investigation. There's been several suspects arrested, and also talk a little bit about the fake news about the suspects that have been circulating. And then there's also the Cour des Comptes, the Court of Auditors in France, that released a few days ago a pretty damning report about the Louvre and their essentially spending and security. So on the arrests, we have had now a total of 7 people that have been arrested in relation to the Louvre robbery that happened October 19th. And 3 of them are suspected to be part of what the French are calling the commando, or essentially the 4-person team that did the spectacular robbery. And then a 4th one is considered to be an accomplice. The other 3 were released pretty quickly. They were basically, since the start, they were not presumed to be direct suspects, but they rather people who had information or were somehow suspected to be linked to the whole case. But in terms of the people who have been arrested, so the first 2 were arrested on October 25th in the late evening, and they are on Ayed G, a 34-year-old Algerian man who's been living in France since 2010, who was arrested on October 25th in the evening at Charles de Gaulle Airport as he was preparing to leave France, apparently with a one-way ticket to Algeria. And
by the way, guys, it's really suspicious when you buy a one-way ticket.
Yeah, honestly, advice for our listeners, especially not exclusively to that, but especially if you have committed some sort of crime and you're trying to escape the country, consider getting a 2-way ticket. Especially if you're, if you have just stolen priceless French crown jewels, don't be cheap. Just get the return ticket.
Practically, like the DGSI, so the Internal Security Forces, the Gendarmerie, and the Police Nationale all probably had their own table, like, database table or Excel table, whatever, where they were literally just like filtering based on like high indicators of, to like try and limit their search down. And they probably had a filter that was like people who bought one-way tickets last minute via questionable financial providers or using like a prepaid credit card to buy it or something. Like buy a return ticket, especially from Algeria. It's like, it's not that expensive, guys. Not that we're encouraging criminality.
No, of course not. But, even if you haven't done any crimes. Just get a return ticket. It's cheaper. So that was the first guy they arrested, and then later that evening they also arrested a second suspect, a 39-year-old man who they arrested him in his home in Aubervilliers. He, unlike the first guy, did not seem to be in a rush to leave. Like, he was just at his home, and there was no indication that he was about to try to go abroad or anything like that. And both of them were, or at least that's what the Paris prosecutor's office is saying, that the way they identified both of them was that their DNA was found at the crime scene and some of the items left behind. And then both of them have priors, also mostly robberies and petty theft and stuff like that. So something that came out a few days later that's interesting about this second suspect, who has now been identified as Abdoulaye N, and being the initial of his last name, is that he turned out to be, or his identity was leaked to the press as that of a well-known motocross TikTok influencer known under the alias Doudou Cross Bitume. And apparently, he's kind of known in, I guess, motocross fan online circles as the king of motocross or something like that. And it was also reported that he is a former delivery driver. He was also working as a unlicensed taxi driver, and he has previously worked as a museum guard. I feel like,
dude, I'm also just imagining the DGSI table for this.
Yeah.
Right, where they're like, filter by guy who has an amazing career in driving getaway motorcycles, who has worked at a museum, so knows something about a museum. And then,
I feel like
then
they
they
were
get
just
to him
going
and they're
off...
like, no way, it's this guy. They're like, this guy has 600,000 followers on TikTok. Like,
he's pretty
If
big.
I was working in the security services, I'd be like, hey, he's probably not going to risk his TikTok over this.
Yeah. Well, I guess, I don't know how much money was he making actually from his TikTok influencing, because I feel like his audience is probably a pretty working class popular one, so it's not like I doubt he got insane sponsorships from like Yamaha and like famous motorcycle brands, right?
He will now.
Yeah. I will say, I feel like this guy is like the most fitting for the kind of dream, like fantasy heist scenario. Like I do agree that the DGSI probably were just, as you said, kind of checking check boxes and being like, no way. He also, honestly, him being a public personality, his photos were, of course, leaked, or his identity was leaked, and now we all know what he looks like. He is pretty attractive. I feel like he works for my kind of Netflix adaptational attractiveness criteria for the heist movie about the Louvre, and I feel like he also just kind of basically has the profile of Lupin from the French TV show Lupin, like, former museum guard, working class, kind of like this, I guess, neighborhood working class hero. Like, there were all these interviews in the media with, teenagers in Aubervilliers. He's like Aubervilliers, born and raised, and everyone's like, oh yeah, everyone knows
one
him.
Of the
taught
poorest...
us all those wheelies and cool tricks and whatnot.
Yeah, one of the most working class towns in the Parisian region, at least historically.
Yeah. And then he also kind of, I feel like his aesthetic is he's kind of going for like a Tupac in the 90s. Like, he has the bandana with like kind of the bunny ears. Like, honestly, it's working for him. I hope it's probably just the nature of the whole story being different. I don't think he'll get as much fan mail as Luigi Mangione, but I hope he gets a little bit of fan mail from the ladies in jail.
Well, and there was a woman, right?
Yeah, okay, so these are the two guys that were arrested first on October 25th. And then 5 days later, on October 30th, there were 5 more arrests that were announced primarily in the Seine-Saint-Denis department, which is where the commune of Aubervilliers, that's historically one of the poorest, and a lot of the kind of, historically very poor and working class communes are in the northern suburbs of Paris. So yeah, that's when they essentially, arrested 5 people and then released 3 of them pretty immediately because they were, they were released without charges. They were investigating them in kind of like a suspected link to the robbery, but they were never suspected to be the actual robbers. But then the other 2 that they arrested were a 37-year-old man, Slimane K, who is suspected to be the 3rd robber. So all 3 of them, Ayed, Abdoulaye, and now Slimane, have been charged with aggravated theft and criminal conspiracy, I believe, or organized theft and criminal conspiracy. So on October 30th, it was this 37-year-old man and his 38-year-old partner. So that's the one woman that has been arrested who is essentially suspected of and has been charged with complicity in organized theft and criminal conspiracy. And both of them, I believe, live in La Courneuve. And they have kids together. And one thing that I thought was fun, like just random, like I don't know why the Paris prosecutor's office even like shared that, but they specifically said about the second kind of wave of arrests that they were not linked to any confessions or any information given by the first 2 guys, but rather DNA evidence, phone records, etc. So it would seem that so far the gang is staying strong and not snitching, which again, great for my Netflix adaptation.
But they're just saying that.
Right. I feel like they probably were saying that to make themselves look cooler because they're like, oh, DNA evidence, like basically to make it seem like they've done the kind of CSI Hollywood TV movie show proper investigating. I don't know. So yeah, I mean, we'll see how this develops. It would seem that the 4th member of, I mean, again, presumption of innocence. We don't know if these 3 guys are the ones who actually robbed the Louvre, but there's definitely at least one of them who is still on the run, and also the jewels have still not been found. I think there was a quote from Macron, who initially, immediately after the robbery, said the jewels will be found, like justice will be restored, etc. Now, I think in his kind of later statement, he said something like he hopes that they will be found.
Classic.
Yeah.
Relying on the media sphere, ensuring that everything is always forgotten the next week.
Yep. Also something that was interesting as the police made those first arrests in the kind of following week or 2, what I started seeing were all of these posts that went viral on Instagram, TikTok, like on social media, that claimed that the press has like essentially obtained photos of the 2 men that were initially arrested. And it was basically, it was this post with these like 2 mugshots of these like ridiculously attractive men, which I saw it, and I cannot tell you the number of times that I saw that on my feed with like people commenting on it and like completely uncritically just assuming that was true. But of course, these photos were like very quickly like proven to not be the photos of the actual of the actual robbers. But yeah, I think one of the first posts that kind of went viral also just had like a very ridiculous caption or headline or whatever where they were saying Paris police have arrested 2 men suspected of stealing the priceless jewels. The pair were captured after a late night chase through the streets near the iconic glass pyramid. Like, I love how just, I don't know, like I feel like because this is France, and then you obviously have a lot of international attention and kind of people being obsessed with these kinds of high stories, and also with Paris, they like, of course, cannot imagine that this would have gone any other way than just, having these 2 really hot men be the robbers magically. And also there was a dangerous, whatever, late night chase, including through like passing through the iconic glass pyramid. Like, come on.
Yeah, they were trying to steal another. They were from the Louvre.
Yeah, they went back for some of the ones they left.
Okay, so what do you guys think though? Like, it means that they haven't found the jewels? Because like, obviously there's like on one hand, it's like it like makes kind of like intuitive sense. I think Liam, you were saying this, that like they would want to sell it for pieces pretty quickly, right? But like at the same time, it doesn't sound like, I'm sure these guys can find someone to buy some gold and diamonds, but kind of doesn't feel like, at least the people they found, and that, you know, that could be because the people they haven't found are a little bit more sophisticated, but it certainly doesn't sound like these are the kind of people who know how to move 110 or whatever million. I mean, obviously it's not worth that much, maybe in practice, but, you know, millions of this kind of thing. And I don't know if they were planning on leaving the country, like...
Yeah, this makes me think it was contracted, which some people had speculated initially. Like, you know, they had a buyer lined up already, or even that buyer hired, you know, set up this gang and hired these people to do it, and then clearly didn't give them a good escape route. Because it's interesting, because clearly
They're all
it was...
escaping differently.
Well, and also clearly it was like, you know, organized. The theft was organized so well. They had it, you know, it went great. And then why would people try to leave by flying out of Paris's largest airport? That seems like the worst way to try to flee France. I mean, you know, France isn't the Schengen area. There's no borders with any of the surrounding countries. Surely it would always be better to drive out of France and try to leave the EU from, I don't know, Romania or something, right? Like surely that would make you less likely to get caught. Yeah, and they were all doing separately. It makes me think that, like, you know, the escape plan was just like every man for himself. Get in contact when you're in Algeria or wherever, and we'll get you your money.
Yeah, to be fair, I doubt there's a lot of flights to Algiers from from Bucharest, but at the same time,
but I don't know, through Istanbul or something, right?
Yeah.
Just surely don't fly out of France. That's like, right? Like,
yeah.
Or
to be fair, that was just one guy. I don't know.
But if it was
other ones didn't even try to leave the country, or at least not immediately.
But if it was through like out of France, you would think you would want to do it like the night of.
Right. I would think I would think the thing to do, surely in any situation like this, is immediately leave the country. And it's so easy to leave the country because you're in the EU. Like, I just feel like, you know, obviously they're going to put alerts out about this immediately and start cooperating with other EU countries' police departments. But there's so many EU countries, you know, you could be anywhere within a few hours. Everything's poorly coordinated. There is dozens of countries.
They're still working to figure out like what happens when you get a parking ticket in like another country, and like how to like make sure that gets paid.
Yeah, right, exactly. And
or actually, the other thing that they're trying to fix is, what if you lose your license in one EU country? What prevents you from getting one in another? That's like a major issue.
It just seems crazy that you would stay in France. Surely you just leave France immediately, and you know, whatever your plan is after that. Surely, I don't know why they wouldn't.
Yeah.
Which just makes me think they hadn't thought it through, or like, which is strange, or they didn't have a good plan.
Yeah, and also I feel like if it was actually commissioned, that should be pretty easy. If it was commissioned and if these guys got paid, that should be pretty easy for the police to find out, right?
Yeah, probably they haven't been paid yet. I mean, because that would, you know, I feel like you would want to have the deal be, okay, you should pay me once I'm out of the country in hiding in whatever non-European country, then you pay me.
It's probably a little bit of both, like
I don't know,
money up front and then money at the end.
Yeah, I would, for these guys' sake, I would hope there was some money up front, right? But yeah, it sounds like they might have.
It seems like my theory is they got hired and they got screwed. Like the whoever hired them didn't care about their escape plan, didn't give them a good escape plan, and doesn't care if they get caught.
Yeah.
Maybe they don't. I don't know. Maybe they don't know. I mean, they must.
Maybe
they must
thought
know.
they would get away with it. I mean, like, it's possible.
I don't know.
Like, to be fair, I'm not like totally really sure why they got caught. Like,
yeah,
I know Nancy said DNA or whatever, but like, really?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, well, it seemed like their plan was to set the ladder and the essentially the forklift truck that they used on fire to kind of get rid of the DNA evidence, and that they weren't able to because the police arrived pretty quickly or something like that. At least that's what the media was reporting.
Set on fire.
Yeah, I saw that. They tried to set it on fire, but it didn't work, and then they just ran away, which is strange. It's got to be hard to set something like that on fire. It's made out of metal,
I feel like
mostly.
I feel like that's the kind of thing where if you're not prepared for setting it on fire, you're going to have a big issue.
Yeah.
It's always when you try to burn something down that it's a lot hard. Like you think of making a campfire. You're like, don't like fires like from a cigarette like cause massive forest fires, and then you're like trying to light a campfire and it takes you like 2 hours.
Goes to show, if you're trying to set up a crew to do something like this, make sure that all your boys do not have criminal records. I understand that it is going to be hard to put a criminal gang together to do a burglary of entirely composed of people who do not have criminal records. But huge advantage if you can do it, because then, like, it doesn't matter if they have your DNA. What can they do about it? Or, maybe they'll figure it out eventually because you did 23andMe or some shit like that. But it's like it's going to take them a lot longer than just, like, plugging it into a database and getting you immediately.
Yeah. For all of our listeners who may be considering organized art theft, our advice is do not do that. That is illegal. But also, if you are going to do it, consider your particular situation. Do you have a clean record? That is definitely something that should go in the pros.
Yeah, I'm just saying white collar criminals should get their collars a bit more dirty. Like you should have people with like PhDs like doing the heavy lifting at the bottom.
Yeah.
Politicians.
Wait, they actually
and
do
CEOs.
that. But yeah, back on the topic of fake news, one thing that I thought was really funny about those fake suspect photos was where they got it from. Like clearly those were mainly, or I think exclusively, American mugshots, and one of them was apparently sourced from hotandbusted.tumblr.com, and it was like some random dancer guy's mugshot from like when he was actually arrested for, I think it was for a robbery, but later all charges were dropped, and then this guy is now essentially surfing on the fame from having been, like, his mugshot having been used for the fake news of the Louvre heist, and it is basically just posting on Instagram and I don't know, like promoting his personal brand. So that's very cool. We live in great times.
Did you said these were U.S. mugshots?
Yeah.
So the background was imperial measurements.
Background was imperial measurements. You didn't see measurements in the background.
Okay.
But also, I mean, it's interesting that people have become, I think, more gullible about things they see on the internet in the past decade rather than less. You'd think people would have gotten wise to, most of the things you see on social media are just fake or whatever, or a joke, and yet the opposite has happened. People are just, people are just seeing this stuff for like 5 seconds and then liking it and scrolling past on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, whatever it is, and not putting any thought into it, but then just registering in their brain, oh, they caught the Louvre burglars and they were hot.
Yeah.
And, it's incredible. I mean, God.
I feel like especially old people are bad at this.
I think lots of young people
I think young people
too.
are bad at it too, with especially, with the short video format. And with Reels, I feel like it's just the way the algorithm works and the way that the whole content format works is, it just incites you to just look at something for 5 seconds and then immediately make your own post about it.
Yes, because so many TikToks start with something like, so apparently the Louvre, they caught the Louvre hijackers and they're really hot,
Yeah.
People just repeating something they saw somewhere else without even citing where they saw it.
Yeah, no, exactly. And it's only getting and going to continue to get worse with AI.
Well, we didn't have this in the kind of our news roundup, but maybe it's worth quickly mentioning right now. The project of the last while, especially under Macron, but it's also at the EU level, has been to like kind of tame social media. Like, it's kind of funny. We're kind of going through the whole like Trump wanted back. You guys remember when Trump wanted to ban TikTok, and that was a whole thing? And kind of Democrats went along with it because they didn't like that, I don't know, Hamas videos were on TikTok, even though I think there was some study that showed that, like, at some point Israel became, like, pro-Israeli content became, like, dominant on TikTok eventually. I don't know. Anyway, in Europe, there's been kind of this, like, idea of, like, taming social media and, like, you know, bringing truth onto the platform by having, like, more and more kind of censorship or whatever. I don't know. It doesn't seem to be working because we're getting all this garbage here in Europe, and the only examples of it kind of actually working seem to be, like, mostly political censorship, or what you might call political censorship. Yeah. I don't know. I have a grand point to make about that, but I'm just not sure you can really clean up the internet without it being kind of like either censorship or just ineffectual control.
I agree. We'll definitely do an episode about all this crap the EU is trying to do, and Britain has already done soon, because it's disturbing and it's championed by liberals, which is especially disturbing.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I completely agree. I think that I've become more and more of a free speech absolutist about these things, not in the way that the right means, because they don't mean it at all when they say that, but like in a real way of just like, the government shouldn't be trying to regulate this stuff at all.
Yeah, I also just love the idea of the government supposedly cleaning up the non-truths and the fake news from social media, while in the case of French media and everywhere else pretty much often having the national TV like presenters repeat falsehoods or straight up fake news. Like there was I don't know if you watched, Patrick, that video I sent you. It was from, what is his name? Is it Michel Bompard? Like the LFI guy?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Bompard.
Bompard. But is his first name Michel? I'm not sure.
Manuel,
okay.
Cool guy, by the way.
Yeah, but he was on a plateau, like on some sort of, what do you call that?
A panel.
A panel, yeah.
Panel, I think, yeah.
Yeah, he was on a news.
Yeah, but they say plateau for like anytime you're on like that stage, like a news stage.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
He was
on the news.
He was on the news, yes.
Learn French.
He was on the news, and they were talking about Zohran Mamdani winning the election in New York, and the TV presenter was, or the host of the show was just spitting one untrue thing after another and being like, but like, did you know that he supports Hamas, or that he didn't?
What? Was this on C News?
It was not even on.
We got to
C
figure
News.
this out, listeners. We're doing live investigation right now.
Yes, Patrick, I sent that to you. Yes,
I've been busy, guys. I'm sorry. Look,
it was on France Inter.
France Inter. France Inter is financed by public dollars. I mean, all the media is, but
France Inter is public. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and the guy did a really good job of basically owning her and being like, I'm going to correct all of this disinformation that you just said on live national television.
That's insane. I mean, like the repression of like anything pro-Palestine here in France has seemingly gotten worse since France recognized the state of Palestine, which is remarkable.
France should get the French government should get its own house in order in terms of French public media, and then the officially licensed TV broadcasters. Once you've got all those people to stop lying blatantly, then maybe we can talk about the internet.
All right, and everyone would say that. I think, regardless of your political color, unless you're the 16 or no, I think the latest one is 14 or 12% of the country that likes Emmanuel Macron or approves of Emmanuel Macron. Unless you're that small sliver of the population, I think most people are unhappy with the way the public media has been definanced, but also politicized and becoming less of like public media in the noble sense of the term and more of a politicized institution, let's say.
Yeah, and on that note, just to conclude on the fake news, topic and the Louvre. You may remember from our previous episode, one of the theories that was widely circulated in the media, even though there was absolutely no reason to believe that, was that there was reason to suspect Russian interference, that essentially the Louvre heist was somehow a Russian plot. So one of the other kind of pieces of viral fake news on social media has been that, well, first in the earlier days or weeks after the heist, that there was one that was alleging that Russian passports had been discovered inside the museum following the incident, and this somehow proving the Russian link, which, obviously ridiculous. Yeah, of course, these Russians commissioned and or executed the heist and then also left their passports conveniently inside the museum. But it's the kind of stuff that gets, 7 million views and it gets a lot of attention. And then the other one that I also thought was kind of funny was another piece of fake news that supposedly that the stolen jewels had turned up on a Russian advertising platform, like essentially like a Russian, I think,
like their
online
Craigslist
shopping platform. Yeah. And it got to a point where the platform issued a response confirming that although listings for Queen Marie Amelie's jewels had been posted, they were in fact part of a prank. Like basically,
Obviously.
yeah, people were fucking around and posting listings for the jewels. I'm sure there's probably people who posted it on the French Craigslist, on the actual Craigslist, but yeah, just also one of those insane theories with absolutely no substance that people love to reshare. I assume that is one of the ones where it's probably more like old people seeing this and being immediately, oh yeah, this is definitely a Russian op.
I'm telling you, these jewels are just going to be in some dude's closet for like the next 100 years.
Yeah.
Like,
I don't know.
Like, what percentage of it? I'm not making any accusations here, but I'm just wondering, what percentage of Elon Musk's wealth would it be to commission something like this? But I mean, like, it's just like, because I've talked to people about this where they're like, what are you going to do with it after? And I'm just like, I don't know, you're probably rich enough where you just like want that in your basement because that's sick.
I mean, I can see that with some really kind of new money billionaire who,
unlike Elon Musk, who's a real classy guy.
No, I believe, sure, Elon Musk, why not? But whoever it is, I just feel like it's kind of, as we talked about on the previous episode, the jewels are kind of tacky. Like, they're not, I feel like, the kind of art that billionaires would typically display in their mansions and stuff.
I agree. I think it's much more likely they're being stolen for their value in gold and jewels.
Yeah, I assume they're going to be, so if they manage to move them, they'll be sold for parts, right? Because it's kind of precious gemstones and stuff like that. You can just disassemble them and sell them for parts, right?
There is also no shortage of famous art and jewelry that you can buy privately as a billionaire. I mean, go on to Sotheby's website and see what's up for auction. Like, it's
true.
It's crazy.
Yeah, but not everyone has one with like an epic robbery story behind it.
True.
Like, okay, come on, just hear me out on this. Imagine like just someone in Dubai being like, yeah, I can have all this, questionable source jewelry I want in the world, but I can't have, like, I love Lupin. It's a great fucking show. I love Netflix. It's sick. Like, I just want that for myself. Like, why not?
I do think that that's a more likely scenario, or one that I'm at least personally more willing to believe, that if this was commissioned by some billionaire, it was more done for like spectacle or fun or whatever, like essentially the grandeur of pulling off a big art heist.
I actually like my Dubai not thesis imagination. Let's just say it's my imagination, right? Because that is probably one of the only places in the world where you could eventually, like in a couple of years, publicly display that and not have any issues.
Yeah. Well, maybe a case for another mysterious, interesting character to solve. Have you guys seen anything about the Fedora Man?
Yeah, I saw something about this, but didn't look into it.
Another, beyond the fake news, there was another kind of online frenzy, because again, it seems like even we're 3 weeks after the heist, and I feel like people keep, at least judging by my Instagram algorithm, people seem to still be into it and kind of following updates on the case and kind of romanticizing whatever the whole story. But so one of the kind of bits of online frenzy and speculation was, so immediately after the robbery had taken place, there was all the police that arrives on the scene, and there was this one photo, or maybe several photos, that were taken by Associated Press with the police kind of at the, in front of the Louvre, and, witnesses, or just basically passersby around. And one of the people kind of standing by just casually next to the police was this one guy with a fedora hat and dressed in this, what can only be described as essentially a Sherlock Holmes cosplay, like this very kind of early 20th century tweed jacket and suit. And everyone was like, who is this mysterious man? Is this Hercule Poirot, the famous French detective, who's come to investigate the case? And then people went
Not
kind
to
of
be pedantic, Hercule Poirot was Belgian.
Sorry.
And famously got upset when people said he was French. Go on, go on.
Whatever. But so obviously, the internet, people on the internet wanted answers, wanted to know who he is. And it was finally revealed, I think only a couple of days ago, that this was in fact a 15-year-old by the name of Pedro Elias Garzon Delvaux, who had apparently come to visit the Louvre with his grandparents during his essentially fall school break, and he just happened to be someone who likes dress, he's a cosplayer or something. He just dresses up in kind of vintage outfits.
I like to be chic, he said. I go to school like this.
Yeah, just I don't know, just a character of a person who just happened to be there. And apparently he claims that he didn't know for several days that the internet was losing their minds about him. Even after finding out, he didn't want to tell anyone immediately that it was him, because, with the photo there is mystery. So he wanted to draw it out and make it last. But his identity has finally been revealed.
Here's a quote from him where he says, by the way, guys, if you haven't seen this photo, I'm sure I'm just the first person who, in the world who hasn't seen this photo, because I don't internet, but it is pretty incredible. But he said, I guess in an interview with the Guardian, I'm reading it on the Guardian, he said that I'm waiting for people to contact me for films, he said, grinning. That would be very funny.
How old did you say he was again? 15?
15.
He does not look 15,
No,
and
he
this
doesn't look
image
15.
with him in front of the police, where the police are clearly like, look, it's already happened, I don't know what we're doing here, and he's just kind of walking by just, it looks suspicious in the context. I have to admit. Well, I think we should leave it there. That was very interesting, Nance, regarding the Louvre. I'm sure there'll be only more intrigue to come, especially if they ever find these jewels. I'd love to know, or it'd be interesting to see what this turns into. Will it become a movie? Maybe.
Definitely, 100%. But the question is, will it become a real movie, or will it become a shitty Netflix original?
Ooh.
Well, I can
or AI
tell you
Gen.
there's already talks between a certain cultural correspondent and a certain streaming platform. Will not tell you which cultural correspondent of which popular podcast it is, nor which platform it is, but there are talks. There's something in the works.
This episode itself is actually going to be adapted into a 6-part miniseries for Apple TV that no one will see, but will make us millions.
Well, hopefully all of this will be a lot more uplifting than the upcoming movie on the decapitation of Samuel Paty. which
Jeez, they're making a movie about that?
remarkably becoming a thing. I can't believe it. And yeah, there's famous actors going to be involved and stuff. It's just
well, maybe they'll do it tastefully, but I can't imagine how. Anyway.
Yeah,
live in a
maybe
society where
Bruno
you just
Le Maire's
have to do-
erotica novel is also very tasteful and classy.
Maybe those two things can be combined into one
God.
Well, with
cross-genre
AI,
film.
you can do anything.
I feel like if you combine those two, you get Michel Houellebecq.
That's true. He probably is writing that novel right now. Anyway, thanks, Patrick. Thanks to our cultural correspondent, Nancy, for coming on again.
Thanks for having
And thanks,
me.
everyone, for listening.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
La France est une chose, à mes yeux, très considérable. Je me fais en effet de la France une certaine idée. Je veux dire par là qu'à mon sens, elle est quelque chose de très grand. Je me fais en effet de la France une certaine idée. Il y a même là quelque chose d'extraordinaire. Il faut que la France joue son rôle, c'est exact. Et pour qu'elle joue son rôle, il faut qu'elle soit la France.